Ladies and gentlemen, today I come before you to speak about a matter that affects every corner of this earth. A problem that, whether we acknowledge it or not, is tearing at the very fabric of our society. And it is not just a problem for one gender, one nation, or one class. It is something that impacts us all. The truth is, the problems we face today are often the result of miscommunication, unrealistic expectations, and emotional decisions. But these problems have a root, and that root starts with women. Now, before you dismiss this as a statement of blame or condemnation, hear me out. I don't stand here to blame women. I stand here to reveal the truth, to uncover the deep struggles that are born out of well-meaning but misunderstood intentions. If we can see these struggles for what they are, we can begin to find healing and move forward as a unified people. So I ask you to listen closely, because the next few minutes are not just about pointing fingers. They are about understanding the underlying causes of division, frustration, and chaos that affect us all. It is said that communication is the key to any successful relationship, yet so many of us struggle with it. But there is something we must understand. When we cannot understand each other, chaos follows. How many times have we seen women misunderstood because of the way they communicate? They may say one thing, but their hearts are saying another. This breakdown in communication can lead to frustration, confusion, and eventually unnecessary conflict. Women, in their complexity, often unintentionally build walls of misunderstanding around them. Walls that, unless addressed, only grow higher. Now, I don't mean to paint a broad stroke over every woman, but it cannot be denied that the pressure to live up to societal standards is overwhelming. Women are expected to be the perfect mother, wife, professional, and friend. Yet these expectations are often unrealistic, impossible even. And when women fall short, they feel the weight of the world on their shoulders. This can lead to emotional exhaustion and, at times, a sense of failure that resonates deeply. We must ask ourselves, how did we let these expectations shape us? We have seen how feminism, in its purest form, strives for equality and fairness, and I commend that. But what happens when this movement is distorted? What happens when it goes too far? Radical feminism, when it sets itself against men rather than for equality, has divided us. It pits genders against each other, creates tension where there should be unity, and in doing so, it recreates the very problems it once set out to solve. We need to restore balance, a balance of respect, understanding, and equality, not division. We live in a world where emotions often guide us more than logic. For women, this is particularly true. How many times have decisions been made in the heat of the moment, driven by emotion rather than careful thought? From relationships to the workplace, emotional decisions can have lasting consequences. And though emotions are a beautiful part of the human experience, they must be tempered with wisdom and reason. Without this balance, we create chaos, confusion, and regret. Let's talk about the family for a moment. The home is the birthplace of society. And within the home, women are the nurturers, the educators, the builders of the future. What happens in the home affects not just today, but the generations that follow. If women struggle with unresolved issues, those struggles are passed down to their children. If emotional turmoil is unchecked, it spreads into the hearts of the next generation. Mothers, sisters, daughters, your actions matter more than you know. They ripple through the fabric of society, shaping the minds and hearts of tomorrow's leaders. In conclusion, my friends, it is not just about blaming or pointing fingers. It is about understanding the truth. We all, men and women alike, must recognize the signs of dysfunction and be willing to address them, to seek healing and to come together. The chaos and confusion we see in the world today are a reflection of the unresolved tensions within our own homes, our own hearts. But hope is not lost. If we can acknowledge these truths, we can start to rebuild, to restore peace in our homes, in our hearts, and in our world. Let us take these signs seriously. Let us begin the work of healing today. Thank you. This speech offers a candid, introspective look at societal issues tied to women and their roles, but also offers hope and a path forward, encouraging unity and self-reflection in a world that thrives on communication. The breakdown of effective interaction is one of the most insidious problems plaguing both personal relationships and broader societal structures. Communication is not just about words. It's about understanding, about truly hearing what someone else is saying and feeling. For women, however, communication is often a complex web of emotions, intentions, and unspoken thoughts. It's not that women intentionally complicate conversations. Rather, it's that they often communicate in ways that are not easily understood by those around them. This leads to frequent misunderstandings, frustration, and ultimately breakdowns in relationships. Women, naturally adept at reading emotional cues and expressing themselves through subtle gestures or body language, sometimes fall into the trap of assuming others can understand these cues without them being articulated clearly. Yet, the world at large is not always equipped to decode these layers of nonverbal communication. In relationships, whether with a partner, a friend, or a colleague, miscommunication arises when what is meant by a woman's words or actions is not what is received. This is especially true in today's fast-paced world, where time and attention are limited, and we are increasingly becoming accustomed to rushed interactions. The pressure on women to get to the point often clashes with their natural tendency to communicate with nuance and depth. In some cases, women may find it difficult to express themselves fully, fearing judgment or misunderstanding, leading to conversations that are fragmented, incomplete, or unclear. This, in turn, leaves others to fill in the gaps, sometimes incorrectly, which only fuels the cycle of miscommunication. The breakdown is further compounded by societal expectations of how women should communicate. For decades, women have been told to be both strong and soft, assertive and humble, direct yet considerate. The constant balancing act of these conflicting expectations creates a confusing communication dynamic. How can a woman be understood when society tells her to speak in one way, but her natural communication style is far more layered and nuanced? In the workplace, these issues are no less severe. Women who are more emotionally expressive or who use their intuition to communicate can often be labeled as overly emotional or irrational. These labels undermine their contributions and make it harder for their voices to be heard. The result is a systemic disadvantage that women face in many professional settings, where their communications are not valued the same way as their male counterparts. It's not that women are incapable of effective communication, quite the opposite. Women are often more skilled at emotional intelligence and empathetic communication than their male counterparts. However, the very skills that give women an edge in understanding others are sometimes seen as weaknesses in environments that value logic, efficiency, and directness. The consequences of communication breakdowns extend far beyond individual relationships. Miscommunication breeds frustration, which can turn into resentment, alienation, and even conflict. In marriages, misunderstandings can escalate into arguments, leaving both parties feeling unheard and unappreciated. In families, these communication gaps can affect the well-being of children, as parents' emotional disconnects ripple through to the younger generation. On a societal level, the lack of effective communication between men and women contributes to a growing divide between the sexes. The inability to see eye to eye on fundamental issues leads to conflict and creates a sense of isolation. This communication gap also perpetuates stereotypes and biases, particularly when women are told to be stronger, more assertive, or more rational, leaving them with little room to express themselves authentically. To address this problem, we need to foster spaces where women's voices are valued and their communication styles are not only understood but respected. We must move away from rigid expectations of how women should speak and instead celebrate the diverse ways in which they express themselves. This can only happen when we stop assuming that communication is a one-size-fits-all experience and begin to embrace the complexity of human interaction. Unrealistic expectations placed on women are perhaps one of the most pervasive and damaging forces in today's society. From the moment a woman is born, she is inundated with a list of things she must be, do, and achieve. Society tells her that she should be kind but assertive, caring but independent, beautiful but not vain, successful but humble, and on and on. The message is clear. There is no room for imperfection, no space for vulnerability. The weight of these contradictory standards is not just heavy, it is crushing. Women are expected to excel in every role they take on without faltering. In the workplace, they are expected to perform at the highest level, often while juggling the demands of home life. As mothers, they are told they must be nurturing, always patient, and ever present, never allowing their personal needs or desires to take precedence over their children's. And in relationships, women are expected to be the emotional anchor, always available to listen, to support, and to care for others. But here lies the rub. No human can live up to these demands, not for long, and certainly not without consequence. The pressure of trying to be everything to everyone takes its toll, often in the form of stress, burnout, anxiety, and depression. Women, being naturally empathetic and caring, internalize these expectations, feeling that if they cannot meet them, they are somehow failing. Not only themselves, but the world around them. This constant striving for perfection, this idea that to be valuable one must be everything all at once, leaves little room for self-compassion or for embracing one's imperfections. Moreover, these unrealistic expectations are often rooted in a narrow, superficial view of success. Women are expected to look a certain way, dress a certain way, speak a certain way, and behave according to prescribed standards. These expectations come from both societal pressures and the media, where an unattainable image of beauty, success, and happiness is portrayed as the ideal. The more women strive to meet these standards, the more they risk losing themselves in the process. They start to measure their worth by their ability to meet external expectations, rather than by their intrinsic value as individuals. This creates a cycle of disillusionment and frustration, where women, despite their best efforts, can never seem to measure up. The cost of these unrealistic expectations is not just emotional, but also physical. The constant pressure to be perfect leads many women to neglect their health, pushing themselves beyond their limits to meet demands that were never meant to be met. They skip meals to maintain a certain body type, sacrifice sleep to meet deadlines, and silence their own voices to keep the peace in relationships. This neglect of one's own well-being has long-term consequences, affecting both mental and physical health. Yet the narrative persists. In the media, women are celebrated for their beauty and accomplishments, but often only in ways that conform to a narrow set of ideals. There are few portrayals of women who are allowed to be both successful and messy, both beautiful and flawed. This perpetuates the false idea that a woman's worth is tied to her ability to meet unattainable standards. In reality, no one can sustain such a pace, And when women inevitably falter, they are left feeling like failures, unable to live up to the image that society has constructed for them. To break free from these unrealistic expectations, women must begin to redefine what success means on their own terms. They must embrace their individuality, acknowledging that they are worthy of love and respect, not because of what they accomplish, but because of who they are. The key to this transformation lies in self-acceptance, in the understanding that imperfection is not failure, but part of being human. Women must learn to give themselves permission to rest, to say no, and to prioritize their own needs. Only then can they begin to heal from the damage caused by unrealistic expectations and find peace within themselves. Feminism, in its purest form, is a movement that seeks equality between the sexes, advocating for women's rights and opportunities in all areas of society. However, like many ideologies, when it is taken too far or distorted, it can lead to unintended consequences that harm both women and men. Radical feminism, for example, often rejects the idea of balance and cooperation between genders in favor of complete opposition. In this extreme form, it can foster division, animosity, and an adversarial relationship between men and women, rather than mutual respect and understanding. This shift can undermine the very goals that feminism originally set out to achieve: equality, justice, and mutual support. While the feminist movement has brought about significant progress, such as securing voting rights for women, fighting for equal pay, and breaking down barriers in education and employment, radical feminism, in its extreme, often creates a false narrative that men are the enemy. This form of feminism focuses on the flaws and wrongdoings of men, rather than encouraging collaboration and dialogue between the sexes. Women, in the eyes of some radical feminists, are seen as oppressed victims who are constantly under siege by patriarchal systems, while men are portrayed as the sole perpetrators of this oppression. This ideological shift pits men against women, creating a hostile environment that is counterproductive to the cause of true equality. The danger of this mindset is that it does not recognize the nuances and complexities of gender dynamics. It ignores the fact that many men also suffer from the constraints of societal expectations, pressures to be strong, unemotional, and dominant, and that these rigid norms harm them just as much as they harm women. By labeling all men as oppressors and all women as victims, radical feminism oversimplifies the issue and alienates potential allies, both male and female, who could work together toward positive change. This results in a polarized, fragmented society, where gender relations are marked by suspicion and distrust, rather than partnership and cooperation. In addition, radical feminism often overlooks the importance of traditional roles that men and women have played throughout history. It disregards the value of femininity and the qualities that women bring to the table, as well as the importance of shared responsibility in families and communities. Instead of acknowledging the strengths that women bring to relationships, workplaces, and society, radical feminism often devalues these roles in favor of a one-size-fits-all approach to gender equality. By doing so, it fails to recognize that gender equality does not require the obliteration of gender differences, but rather a respect for the unique contributions that both men and women offer. Another consequence of radical feminism is that it can often lead to a sense of resentment and disillusionment among women who feel pressured to adopt extreme viewpoints to fit in with the movement. Women who do not fully align with radical feminist ideals may feel marginalized or alienated, even though they support the core principles of equality and empowerment. This creates an environment where women are either forced to conform to a narrow, one-dimensional view of feminism or risk being labeled as traitors to the cause. The result is an exclusionary atmosphere where genuine dialogue and diverse perspectives are stifled in favor of ideological purity. To move forward, we must embrace a more balanced approach to feminism, one that acknowledges both the struggles of women and the challenges faced by men in a patriarchal society. True equality means recognizing that both genders have been harmed by rigid, stereotypical expectations and working together to dismantle these norms. It means celebrating the differences between men and women while also ensuring that both have equal opportunities to succeed and thrive in all aspects of life. Radical feminism, while born out of a desire to right historical wrongs, should not be allowed to become a force that divides us further. Instead, we should aim for a feminism that unites, empowers, and elevates both women and men, allowing us to build a society where equality is not a battle between the sexes, but a shared goal. Emotions play a fundamental role in human decision-making, but when emotions take precedence over rational thought, the consequences can be far-reaching. Women, like men, are deeply emotional beings, yet they often express these emotions more openly and intensely. This can be a strength, as emotional intelligence is a valuable asset in personal and professional relationships, enabling women to connect with others, empathize, and navigate complex social dynamics. However, when emotions become the driving force behind decisions rather than a complementary factor to logic and reason, problems arise. One of the significant challenges women face is the tendency to make emotional decisions, particularly when they feel overwhelmed, hurt, or threatened. In relationships, for instance, emotional responses can lead to impulsive decisions that might seem appropriate in the heat of the moment but are regretted later. An argument with a partner may result in harsh words or actions fueled by anger or frustration, only to cause deeper wounds that take longer to heal. Similarly, in the workplace, emotional decisions can lead to reactions that are not aligned with professional goals. A woman might react defensively to feedback or criticism, making choices based on how she feels at that moment, rather than on what would be the best course of action for her career in the long term. The danger of emotional decision-making is that it often clouds judgment and distorts perceptions of reality. A woman may believe that she is acting in her best interest or responding to a situation in a fair and just manner, but her emotions, whether fear, sadness, or frustration, may cloud her reasoning. For example, when someone is in a highly emotional state, they may overestimate the severity of a problem or perceive a situation as more threatening than it truly is. In such moments, women may make choices based on perceived injustices, seeking to correct what feels wrong in the immediate moment, but in doing so, they may inadvertently make the situation worse. This tendency to act on emotions also affects decision-making in more subtle ways, such as in social situations. Women, who often take on caretaking roles, may be so focused on meeting the emotional needs of others that they neglect their own. They may make decisions that favor the happiness or comfort of others, sacrificing their own well-being in the process. The desire to please or protect can result in women putting themselves last, making choices that are not necessarily in their best interest, but are made out of a sense of obligation or emotional attachment. While emotions are an important part of the decision-making process, they must be tempered with reason and self-awareness. One of the most challenging aspects of emotional decision-making is that it often bypasses the rational mind, leading to actions driven by feelings rather than logical analysis. It's not that women should suppress their emotions, far from it, but rather that they should learn to navigate the space between emotion and logic. The ability to pause, reflect, and consider the long-term impact of decisions can help women make choices that are not only emotionally satisfying in the moment, but also logically sound in the long run. This process of balancing emotion with reason requires self-regulation, mindfulness, and often the support of others who can offer perspective and objectivity. Women who are able to develop this skill can make more informed decisions, leading to better outcomes in their personal lives, careers, and relationships. Rather than being driven by impulsive reactions, they can respond thoughtfully, considering both their emotional needs and the practical realities of the situation. The ability to separate emotion from logic does not mean that women must abandon their emotional selves. On the contrary, their emotional intelligence is one of their greatest strengths. The key is to find a balance where emotion is considered alongside reason and where decisions are made with both the heart and the mind in alignment. By developing this balance, women can empower themselves to make choices that are not only emotionally fulfilling, but also rational and productive, leading to better long-term outcomes for themselves and the people they care about. The ripple effect that a woman's behavior has on children and families is profound and undeniable. As the primary nurturers and caretakers in many homes, women hold a unique and pivotal role in shaping the dynamics of the family unit. From the way children interact with others to the emotional climate of the home, the behavior of mothers and women in general deeply influences the environment in which families thrive or struggle. This influence is not just about what women do, but how they do it. Their responses to stress, their methods of problem solving, and the emotional tools they provide their children all have lasting consequences. When women are emotionally stable, confident, and emotionally intelligent, they create a home environment that promotes emotional well-being and resilience in their children. Children learn to regulate their emotions and navigate the world with a sense of security and understanding. They see how their mother handles adversity, how she resolves conflict, and how she demonstrates love and respect. These lessons become foundational building blocks for the child's own relationships and emotional development. The home, in this sense, becomes a place where children feel safe to express themselves, to learn, and to grow. However, when a woman is struggling, whether emotionally, mentally, or physically, the impact on the family can be equally significant. Women often bear the emotional weight of the family, absorbing stress and emotional turmoil in ways that can lead to burnout. When this burden is too heavy, it can manifest in behaviors that negatively affect the family. Women who are overwhelmed may struggle with patience, or they may find themselves withdrawing emotionally, which can create a sense of instability and insecurity in the home. Children, particularly younger ones, are especially sensitive to this emotional environment and may internalize the tension they feel. Furthermore, women's coping mechanisms and problem-solving skills also shape how children approach challenges. If a woman resorts to unhealthy patterns such as avoidance, aggression, or excessive emotional reactions, children may learn to replicate these behaviors. For example, a child who observes their mother dealing with conflict through outbursts of anger or shutting down emotionally may grow up thinking this is an appropriate response to stress or disagreement. Similarly, if a mother neglects her own well-being to care for others, her children may learn to prioritize the needs of others above their own, which can lead to problems with self-care and boundaries later in life. The role of women in shaping the family is not limited to direct caregiving. Women also influence the values and principles that guide family life. They are often the ones who instill a sense of empathy, responsibility, and respect for others. Through their actions and words, they communicate what is acceptable behavior and what is not. Women model how to care for others, how to express love, and how to deal with disappointments and hardships. In doing so, they pass on not only their values, but also their coping strategies to the next generation. A woman's behavior also impacts the relationships within the family. particularly in terms of the partnership between parents. When a woman is able to communicate effectively, maintain emotional balance, and approach challenges with a problem-solving mindset, the relationship between parents is likely to be stronger. This, in turn, creates a more stable and harmonious environment for the children. Conversely, when a woman is overwhelmed, emotionally volatile, or disengaged, it can strain the relationship between parents, leading to tension, conflict, and confusion within the family. Children are incredibly perceptive and can feel the undercurrents of discord between parents, even when it is not overtly expressed. This ripple effect extends beyond the immediate family, influencing extended family relationships and the broader community. A mother's approach to relationships and family dynamics sets an example for how children will interact with others as they grow older. They learn what it means to be a caring partner, an attentive parent, and a responsible community member. A woman's influence shapes the future